Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering your job is gone, your bank account is empty, your social status has vanished, and your primary relationship has ended. When you look in the mirror, who is the person staring back at you? Most of us struggle to answer that because we rarely separate our sense of self from our possessions. Modern conditioning encourages an outward identity, where we calculate our value based on test scores, job titles, and the steady collection of external praise. This creates an identity that functions like a skyscraper built without a foundation. It appears imposing during stable times, yet it remains vulnerable to a total collapse the moment a crisis occurs. The persistent anxiety of the modern era often stems from this lack of internal architecture, a missing core capable of surviving when every external marker of success is stripped away. To find a solution, we have to look at an extreme stress test of the human spirit. In 1940s Vienna, Dr. Viktor Frankl lived at the peak of his professional success as a respected neurologist and psychiatrist. Frankl's identity was anchored in his clinical reputation and his life's work, a specialized academic manuscript he had spent half a lifetime writing and refining. Everything changed when the train doors opened at Auschwitz. The guards immediately tore his manuscript from the lining of his coat and threw it into a fire. Decades of research and thought vanished in a few seconds. The soldiers confiscated his clothes, they took his watch, and even his wedding ring. They shaved his head, erasing his most distinct physical features, and replaced his name with a number tattooed into his forearm, 119104. The camp served as a machine for depersonalization. It forced Frankl to discover exactly what remains of a human being when every social mask is forcibly removed. Even in those conditions, Frankl maintained his critical perspective. He observed his fellow prisoners transition from initial shock to a state of total emotional apathy, a psychological shutdown that allowed them to witness corpses and brutality without reacting. However, Frankl documented an abnormal spike in the death rate, specifically following December 25, 1944. This occurred despite no changes in the weather or the meager food rations. The deaths followed the collapse of a specific psychological timeline. Thousands of prisoners had survived by convincing themselves they would be home by Christmas. When the holiday passed and the liberation did not happen, their physical health failed as their hope evaporated. Frankl concluded that pinning one's will to live on a specific, uncontrollable future event is a high-risk strategy. Once that expectation fails, the entire reason for enduring the present vanishes. Outsourcing your survival to circumstances you cannot control leaves your internal state fragile. It suggests that a meaningful existence depends entirely on things going your way. During a freezing march, a guard struck Frankl across the face for no reason. The biological urge to feel rage and humiliation is almost impossible to suppress in that moment. Yet Frankl identified a split-second gap between the external stimulus and the internal response. He realized that inside this tiny space, the individual holds the power to choose. This is the ultimate human freedom, the ability to decide that an act of cruelty belongs to the perpetrator, not the victim. By choosing how to view the slap, Frankl kept his internal state independent of the guard's violence. Frankl rebuilt his meaning using 3 pillars: creation, his mental reconstruction of his lost manuscript; love, his vivid internal conversations with his wife; and attitude, the specific way he chose to bear unavoidable suffering. Mastering this gap turns a person into the architect of their own character. Resilience comes from the disciplined practice of interrupting the automatic reaction and choosing a response that aligns with your values. Frankl proposed a radical shift in how we view our existence. He suggested that we stop demanding that life provide us with a specific meaning or a clear explanation for our pain. Frankl observed that life puts the question to us. Every situation we face is a prompt, asking us how we choose to respond to the reality in front of us. Modern invisible prisons function similarly. We lose our agency to toxic jobs or the anxiety of social media because we let these triggers dictate our internal state. Expanding the gap in our daily lives is the only way to reclaim that power. Practicing a pause strengthens the mind. It allows you to find a specific, personal why, a reason to keep going that is entirely independent of your current bank balance or job title. This shift moves the agency back into your hands. Your circumstances stop being the final word on who you are, and instead become the raw material you use to build your character. When the camps were liberated in 1945, Frankl discovered his mother, his brother, and his wife had all been killed. He had lost almost everyone he loved. He responded by writing. In just 9 days, he completed the draft for Man's Search for Meaning to share his psychological findings with the world. Frankl converted his trauma into a framework for survival that has since assisted millions. He proved that even in the most extreme conditions, the human spirit can maintain a sense of purpose. Frankl brought a fire of internal freedom out of the darkness and handed it to us. Now you have to decide what you will use it to illuminate in your own life.